Hi, welcome to the stream. I'm Derek Ashang. We have got a powerful show for you today, probably our most talked about ever online. Today, the political unrest in Bahrain may have been forgotten by much of the world, but netizens are pulling out all the stops to keep this debate alive. Our digital producer, Ahmed Shihab Eldin, is here looking out for your live feedback, and there's already been a ton of it already. Joining us on the couch is Ben Ratche. He's the founder and CEO of Change.org, which is the world's fastest growing social action platform. Ben, this is not your first time here in the stream, but for those of our audience members who haven't met you yet, tell us again what Change.org is all about.
Well, it's awesome to be back. So Change.org is an online platform around the world that allows anyone, anywhere to start a campaign around an issue they care about. We're having a huge amount of activity in the Arab world overall and excited about the empowerment that enables.
That's brilliant. Well, it's so good to have you on this show because this is a show that's fundamentally about change and different visions of what that change can be. And let's jump right into it. Now, before we do, remember, this is your show, and you can actually watch it live with other viewers around the world. Right now, we are beta testing Google+. And if you'll take a look at my screen, you can see a number of our contributors are actually online right now. Can you guys see me? What's up, y'all?
Yes, we can. Hi there.
Brilliant. Okay, great to see you. We've got a number of different parts of the world represented, and it's a pleasure to have you all joining us. Now, we're going to talk to them a little bit more in our post-show. We're going to give them a chance to get together and give us their take on today's topics. Remember, you can share your stories with the stream by tweeting them to us using the hashtag AJStream.
Salam, this is Hamza Shargabi. I'm a doctor blogging from Yemen. I'm in the stream.
Now, the uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt have inspired people from across the Arab world and beyond to stand up and demand change. In Bahrain, that spirit led protesters to gather at the Pearl Roundabout. Now, the majority of Bahrain's population is Shia Muslim, and they say they suffer from discrimination at the hands of the ruling Al Khalifa family, who are Sunni. In largely peaceful demonstrations, which I'll give you a little bit of a view of right here. Let's take a look at some footage from earlier this year. In these largely peaceful demonstrations, you actually saw massive crowds at the Pearl Roundabout demanding democratic reform. The government eventually banned protests and sent in security forces to stop the demonstrators. More than 1,000 people were arrested and many key opposition leaders await trial. The government accuses the protesters of being influenced by Iran and says that its powerful Shia neighbor has been stirring sectarian divisions. The protests have stopped, but the debate over the political situation in Bahrain continues. Now, recently, Al Jazeera released a special report that has detailed events around the protest. Bahrain shouting in the dark resulted in an explosion of online commentary and really reignited a social media battle between Bahrainis on both sides of this debate. Let's take a look at some footage from this particular documentary that has stirred so much conversation.
The people retreated. And state TV had a message for them.
في غيهم وضلالهم فإن أعين الأمن مفتوحة ولن ترحمهم العدالة حيث تقف لهم بالمرصاد.
Starting with sportsmen, Bahrain TV ran a campaign to name and punish prominent Bahrainis.
اللي ما كان مع النظام فهو ضد النظام.
نعم.
National football stars were called on the phone and shamed on live TV.
هل ذهابك للدوام تعتبر خطأ وإساءة؟
ما كنت في مكان في صور جلالة الملك على الأرض. شنو مبررك الحين؟ هل اللي سويته دي غلط؟
ولكن أنت شاركت في شيء غير قانوني، شاركت في مطالب غير حقوقية.
Players were called out as national traitors because they attended democracy protests.
فقدت انتمائك لوطنك.
كل من حاول أن يتحدث بس بإسقاط النظام راح يتحاسب. ما نبي عفو.
Now, this program has gotten more than 300,000 views on YouTube, primarily from users in the Arabian Gulf. It's also created an outpouring of activity on Twitter, Facebook, and Twitter petitions supporting this. If you'll take a look at my screen, This is just some of the tweets that we got today. I have 160 that we haven't even looked at, but it continues to go on. There were many challenging issues that were raised by this documentary, and within just a few hours of announcing this program, we were inundated with thousands of these tweets. Joining us now from Manama is Suhail Al-Husaybi, a social entrepreneur and blogger who supports the government. Also joining us is Zainab Al-Khawaja, a Bahraini activist who was previously jailed by the government. Welcome, both of you, to the stream.
Hi. Thank you, Derek. It's great to be here.
Now, Suhail, let me begin with you. The king declared martial law in Bahrain and brought in a GCC military force. Some Bahrainis are saying that the majority of the people support the existing government. If that is the case, why was it necessary to bring in outside forces, and why are some of them still there?
Okay, just a technical point, Derek. It wasn't a martial law, it was a state of emergency. Not that it matters much, but there's a slight legal difference. As far as the GCC forces are concerned, it's important to realize, and for all your viewers around the world to realize, Bahrain belongs to a collective similar to the EU, and it's called the Gulf Cooperation Council. The heads of state in the Gulf Cooperation Council had a meeting, and they jointly decided that the Peninsula Shield, the armed forces of the GCC, would come into Bahrain. Now, it's worth noting that none of these forces, not a single soldier was used in the clampdown against the rioters. It was used, the government said it was used to protect key installations, but really my own interpretation is that it was done to show a message to Iran. Iran has been making very many intimidating statements about Bahrain. The head of the Iranian parliament said that Tehran is watching the situation in Bahrain very closely and will take action when appropriate. So it was a message to Iran to show everybody that we are not alone. Any attack against Bahrain is an attack against the whole GCC.
Now, Suhail, let me get Zainab to respond on this point, because as Zainab, as Suhail mentioned, the Bahraini government has said that Iran has been involved in this issue. What role do you believe Iran has played in potentially fomenting sectarian division?
I think the Bahraini dictatorship, the monarchy in Bahrain, is trying to use Iran as an excuse to crack down on pro-democracy protests in the country. They haven't just used Iran as an excuse. Actually, they've been blaming a lot of other countries for supporting the pro-democracy protesters. Anyone who says anything that supports the pro-democracy movement in Bahrain is suddenly claimed to be supporting rioters in Bahrain. We've had them saying that the protesters in Bahrain are being supported by America, by Israel, by Iran, by Ireland, recently by France. You don't have to do much to be accused of supporting pro-democracy protesters in Bahrain.
Now, Suhail, to that point, we've seen in all of these Arab revolutions this spring, whether Tunisia, whether Egypt, whether we're looking at Syria or Yemen, we've always seen the regime claim that outside forces are a part. How is Bahrain any different?
Because if you look at actual Iranian television, they were during the crisis making almost daily statements about Bahrain. And like I said, there's a video of an interview with the head of the Iranian parliament saying that we are watching the situation very closely in Bahrain, and Tehran will make the necessary decision or the necessary action when appropriate. If it comes out of their own mouths, I don't know what other evidence we need. Also, we had Hezbollah making comments about Bahrain, and Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, he actually said, I personally know some of the leaders in the Bahraini opposition. So it doesn't get more plain than that. I just want to add something very important, Derek. I just want to emphasize His Majesty the King has acknowledged that the demands of the rioters or protesters, whatever you want to call them, were legitimate. Better housing, better jobs, better representation, all these are considered legitimate needs and were acknowledged. And His Royal Highness the Crown Prince went to have dialogue with the opposition leaders, and he was snubbed, and the offer for dialogue was rejected. So I cannot comment on Egypt, I cannot comment on all these other places, but I can definitely say with great confidence that Iran has been making intimidating statements about Bahrain, and I can later on Twitter, I would be happy to share links about this.
Well, you've brought up the issue of Twitter, and we're actually getting a lot of feedback coming in online, so we're going to try to get some of comments from our audience.
You know, on the issue of Bahrain, on Iran, sorry, forgive me, we've gotten so many comments on Facebook. I just want to read one from Muhammad Hamid. He's saying, the Bahraini regime always uses the link to Iran as an excuse for giving the local and legal uprising in Bahrain. The uprising in Bahrain has deep-rooted local reasons and causes especially the autocratic and dictatorship state of affairs, and he focuses on the discrimination against 70% of the population. Now, Suhail, I just want to ask you, we noticed on your blog that you wrote in May, I'm going to scroll down here, you said, in Bahrain, we have a tribal system that has been in place for centuries, and uprooting this system overnight and replacing it with a Western-style democracy is very dangerous. Our system may not be perfect, but it works. If it works, how come tens of thousands and estimates as much as hundreds of thousands have come and taken to the streets to tell the government it doesn't work?
And I didn't say it works perfectly. I said it's a system that works, and we definitely have our flaws. And I want to emphasize this point again. It's really important. And for people watching around the world, please don't confuse things and don't lump us with other countries. The king, the government has acknowledged the demands. They have realized that these demands are legitimate, and they have promised to make changes. We have introduced a national dialogue recently concluded with 300 different people in Bahrain from different sectors of society. Different issues were raised. They were brought to direct attention of His Majesty the King. And also, let me remind you, this is the first Arab head of state that has brought in an independent human rights commission, completely independent from the government, to scrutinize his own government. This has never been done before, and if this doesn't prove his dedication to reconciliation and making sure that Bahrain is moving forward, then I don't know what else I can tell anybody.
Let me get Zainab to respond to this. Zainab, what is your take on this independent commission? Do you feel that it is a step in the right direction?
Well, as always, the Bahraini people have been very skeptical about the things that the king has been doing. For example, the national dialogue and bringing in the BICI. The king of Bahrain has made many promises to the Bahraini people before, and we have learned the hard way not to trust what he tells us. When the BICI came in, at first we were skeptical, but many were willing to give them a chance to look into the facts in Bahrain and bring out the truth about the systematic torture, about the killings, about the detention, the arbitrary detention. However, comments and statements by Mr. Bassiouni lately have really been disappointing to the people of Bahrain. He is already, before they have been done with the investigations, he's already making statements saying that these have been personal acts done by low-level officials, and that the Minister of Interior and higher officials had nothing to do with them. This is shocking to us because in Bahrain right now there are so many people who have been abused. We've been going from village to village trying to take testimonies, and for 3 days we've been in one village and we can't get all the people. We haven't been able to get all the testimonies from people because in every house you go into there is either a detainee or someone who had been injured, someone who had been tortured. It's unbelievable.
All right, so actually there's some interesting comments coming on these points from our online community.
On the topic, Zainab, to be fair, on the topic of social media, we have a tweet from Activate Bahrain saying, it's important to note, though, that Bahrain never shut down Twitter or Facebook or BlackBerry during any phase of the unrest, unlike some of its Arab neighbors. And then we even have this tweet from a Naif saying, in Bahrain, they're called, quote, peaceful protesters. In London, they were called rioters, in the UK riots we saw last week. Can you spot the difference? So maybe to you, what was the role of social media used in terms of identifying protesters, and what was that willing to do?
Well, the Bahraini government, unlike other governments, instead of trying to close down the Facebook or Twitter, what they did is pay a lot of people, which we call trolls now, to be on those on Twitter and on Facebook and try to, first of all, harass any activists who are pro-democracy by swearing, by threatening them, and then also try to spread lies about the movement in Bahrain and what is in fact happening in Bahrain. So they just had a different method of trying to crush activists who were online. As for the London rioters. Actually, it's really interesting to see the difference between the peaceful protesters in Bahrain and the London rioters. We can judge what's happening in Bahrain by how the protesters were in the beginning of the movement on February 14 and on the roundabout, how peaceful they were, how the protesters were painting, were singing, were writing poetry about the movement. The violence started when the government, like the cowards that they are, attacked peaceful protesters in the middle of the night while they were sleeping.
Now,
the
Zainab,
violence has come from the Al Khalifa regime, not from the protesters, unlike the situation in London.
Zainab, I want to play a clip for you both. Just take a listen to this quickly.